Hello everyone, and welcome to Story of Arknights. In this episode, we're going to cover episode 2 of the main theme, Separated Hearts. Let's begin. 5:57 AM. Cloudy. Visibility 17 kilometers. Desert 4 kilometers from the outskirts of Lungmen on Rhodes Island's landship. 4 days after the Chernobog rescue mission. Doctor is woken up by PRTS in his room. He slowly gets up and leaves for the landship's bridge, where he's requested to be present. In there, Amiya and Doberman are already waiting for them. They ask how they're feeling and if they can move properly now, implying the rescue operation took a toll on Doctor's body. Doberman says that while the Chernobog operation resulted in heavy losses, they got a lot in return. Other than saving Doctor, they also got a lot of info on Reunion, which they used to negotiate with the nomadic city of Lungmen. Lungmen is an autonomous region of the country called Yan, which is inspired by China. It is located near the eastern Ursus border. Ursus, by the way, is inspired by Russia, and most notably, it is the closest nomadic city to Chernobog. Rhodes Island possesses some evidence that Lungmen might be targeted by Reunion next. However, for more detailed information, the organization must wait until another one of its leaders, Dr. Kaltsit, returns from Lungmen negotiations. During the negotiations, Lungmen agreed to let Rhodes Island temporarily camp near the city and compensate a portion of their losses and expenditures in return for Rhodes Island helping them with defending the city outskirts. The reason Amiya woke up Doctor so early today is because while, just like the last few days, they're expected to guard the outskirts of District 5 of Lungmen while the city is taking in Chernobog survivors, they believe today another wave of them might have some Reunion members mixed in. Doctor prepares the operational squad and they set out for Lungmen shortly. At 10:14 PM, Doctor and Amiya are set to meet one Madame Chen in District 5 inspection and quarantine zone of Lungmen, where all the refugees flowing into the city are checked for oropathy. An announcement can be heard encouraging citizens to report unregistered infected so that they can be detained. Just as they meet Chen, who complains about them being late, some infected cause a commotion by resisting detention. Chen quickly orders present members of Lungmen Guard Department, LGD, to control the situation and take them in. Amiya and Doctor note that she's much stricter than they imagined. She tells them to follow her and takes them to a large building in the city center. The remaining Rhodes Island operators present stay in District 5 to assist with inspections. As it turns out, Doctor and Amiya are brought to the Lungmen government building. When they enter, they can hear negotiations are already ongoing. Inside the office, Dr. Kaltsit, another one of Rhodes Island leaders, is explaining the situation to Wei Yanwu, the chief executive of Lungmen. She says that Lungmen will be Reunion's next target, praises the city for gathering information on the movement, but is convinced that simple quarantine zones and routine inspections will not be enough to prevent Reunion from infiltrating and attacking. At this point, Chen cuts in to say LGD has no obligation to give all the details on their operations and that they're already prepared for possible infiltration. Kaltsit answers this by saying they've effectively handled unarmed infected, but aren't quite prepared for an organized attack of this scale. She believes that the best way to counter infected is using infected yourself. Wei Yanwu asks about the apparent expertise of Rhodes Island in dealing with Reunion, to which Kaltsit says it's more experience than expertise, and that due to their involvement with the Chernobog incident, they managed to gather a lot of information on the movement, but are not willing to share it for now, instead using it as a bargaining chip for the negotiations. Lungmen's chief is rather displeased with this and is unwilling to accept it or trust Rhodes Island at all. Kaltsit emphasizes that the reason they have this much info on Reunion is that Rhodes Island was strong enough to obtain it. Chen notes that, no matter what the case, Lungmen won't simply trust another group of infected, to which Kaltsit answers in a rather sarcastic and rude tone that if they value punishing infected more than the city's safety, she will simply surrender immediately and sigh from her jail as Reunion burns down Lungmen. Wei tries to calm down Chen, who still thinks it is inappropriate for Rhodes Island to meddle with their internal affairs. He then asks her to assess Rhodes Island's combat abilities based on what she saw during their assistance with guarding District 5. She says there is little reason to doubt the company's strength, but believes LGD alone is more than enough to control the situation. Wei Yanwu also believes Rhodes Island's price regarding the cooperation with defense is too high, as their input is far from equal. He still doubts their strength. To which Calcit notes that based on their previous experience and estimates, if no proactive actions are taken against Reunion, they will take over the city in 2 weeks. Chen and Wei are not convinced, so Calcit decides to let Amiya explain the events of Chernobog, especially their encounter with Tallulah. Hearing about Reunion's leader overwhelming strength and how Rhodes Island was able to persevere, he finally seems convinced to work with them. He still, however, thinks the price is too high and decides to add some demands to the deal. The first condition is that Rhodes Island will help LGD suppress the Union threat, including identifying threats within the city and threats related to Chernobog fallout, assessing the level of infiltration the infected have in Lungmen, and sharing any potentially helpful information. The second condition is that if Reunion causes more damage than Rhodes Island estimated, the company will help handle it and support the post-disaster management to the best of their ability. Amiya adds one additional demand from her side, that all interpretations of the clauses included to the deal must be agreed upon between them. Both sides agree and the deal is sealed. Wei Yanwu notes that Rhodes Island should follow Chen and her LGD squad's lead, because in Lungmen, in order to avoid panic, infected can't freely stroll around the city wherever they want. With that, Rhodes Island representatives leave the office. Amiya notes people like Wei are very hard to deal with, to which Calcit says she will have to learn to deal with them and that she did great. She then greets Doctor, but she seems rather annoyed, disdained and doubtful about whether the sacrifices were worth their rescue. The next day, in Lungmen slums, we can see an Ursus girl giving a protective charm or a doll to some infected children, telling them to hide and then running off. A group of rioters run in and threaten the children. They are looking for the girl that just ran off. Now at this moment, Amiya appears and scares the thugs off with her arts. With her, 2 other operators are present, Franca and Liskar, who operate with Rhodes Island based on its contract with Blacksteel, a private military company they work for. Amiya says that Penguin Logistics, a logistics and delivery service based in Lungmen, is additionally helping them with intel and mapping. She also notes she just noticed the Ursus girl as she escaped, most likely an unregistered infected. It is then that Lisk Arm gets a call from Chen telling her they're looking for an infected that perfectly matches the description of the girl, named Misha, and that they must find her and bring her to LGD. The squad begins the chase. Liskarm also gets a call that some individuals in the slums are openly hostile to RI operators. With that in mind, they move in on Misha. Once they reach her hidden in an abandoned building, she is very distrustful and think they are there to arrest her. Amiya shows her that she is also an infected just like her, which eases her up a bit. She explains some people, including other infected, are looking for her for some reason, and that Misha's safety is currently Rhodes Island's priority. This convinces Misha to come with them peacefully, though she still kind of thinks she doesn't have much choice in the matter. Amiya reports on finding the Ursus girl to Chen, who sets up the meeting point to hand her over immediately. Liskarm isn't sure why the LGD is upholding information on why Misha is so important and thinks it's bad for the mission. Franca simply thinks it would do no good for LGD to share too much info with Rhodes Island. Amiya contacts Penguin Logistics to help them choose the safest route through the slums to rendezvous with Chen. A Sancto operator of Penguin Logistics by the name of Exusia shortly arrives to help them navigate. First, however, she notes that Reunion forces have already infiltrated Lungmen to some degree, and their troops are currently closing in on their location. The operational squad readies for combat. After breaking through the initial wave of Reunion, they charge for the route chosen by Exusia. En route, they talk about handing Misha over to LGD, a fact the girl was not aware of. She seems distraught by this information, knowing LGD treats the infected rather harshly. Amiya tries to console her, saying LGD immediately wanted Rhodes Island to transfer Misha to them upon learning about her, and that the guard department will give her the best protection in Lungmen, but she isn't convinced. Meanwhile, Exusia decides to quickly check out a shortcut for the squad and temporarily separates from Rhodes Island to do so. After a bit, we can see Texas, another Penguin Logistics member, neutralizing a Reunion ambush in an abandoned building. She then joins Rhodes Island, who are discussing how Reunion, just like LGD, must be targeting Misha for some reason, and that RI is caught between them in a disadvantageous position. Texas leads them to the route confirmed and relayed to her by Exusia. Before they can take it, however, they are intercepted by a Reunion squad led by one of Reunion's commanders, Skull Shatterer. He approaches Misha, saying he finally found her, obviously knowing her. Misha is confused, but before anything else can happen, Rhodes Island escapes. Skull Shatterer doesn't give chase, saying they can't run away. He is also seemingly very happy about finding Misha. RI and Texas are led by Exusia through comms to a rather unorthodox route, leading them up to the slum's rooftops. Unfortunately, the rooftops route isn't as safe and clever as Exusia expected, and the squad is intercepted by Reunion troops equipped with rudimentary jetpacks. Rhodes Island is forced to neutralize them, after which Exusia regroups with the squad. Amiya notices Misha's complexion is looking bad and is starting to get worried. Ursus girl also says she's feeling dizzy. She asks her about how long she has been in Lungmen and if she was infected before the Chernobog uprising or caught oropathy during it. She answers she's been here for a week and is not sure when she was infected, but since she got to Lungmen, originium rocks have started forming on her legs. After that, her state worsens and Amiya calls for medics. Amiya explains to the other squad members that Misha is suffering from an acute outbreak of oropathy, a rare occurrence after just 1 week of being infected. We also learn that Franca is also infected, through some banter between her and Liskarm. The medication is administered to Misha to stop the acute symptoms. As for the chronic form of oropathy, the illness is generally managed by daily intake of medication, slowing or sometimes even halting the progression of originium accumulating in the body, which in turn slows down the onset of various symptoms and finally death. Amiya is determined to bring Misha back to Rhodes Island after everything in Lungmen is over, and says she will make sure to tell LGD her symptoms need to be managed for the time being. Suddenly, the squad hears a scene. Regular infected civilians are arguing with Reunion. They accuse them of destroying their homes and now causing a commotion that will attract LGD's attention and block their way. Reunion members threaten them that, even though they are infected, if they don't get out of the way, they will resort to violence. Rhodes Island is a company caring about infected well-being in general, intercept and neutralize the Reunion forces, saving the civilians, who lament losing their homes in the slums, all ruined by Reunion movement's activities. Misha regains consciousness and starts trusting Amiya, accepting being taken to LGD. Rhodes Island finally reaches the meeting point where they hand over Misha. Chen complains about them being late again and that it's a safety risk. Amiya answers they were attacked multiple times. She asks to ensure Misha's safety and for LGD to monitor her health. She hopes Lungmen will allow Misha to get transferred to Rhodes Island after they get what they want from her. Chen answers she will send an application to Chief Wei and that if nothing troublesome comes up, it should be no problem to transfer her soon. Amiya promises Misha to protect the kids in the slums and asks Misha to teach her how to make dolls next time they meet, and with that, LGD leaves. Rhodes Island and Penguin Logistics take a moment to reflect on all the events that transpired. Texas believes RI's hands will be more tied the more they get tangled in this situation. Liskarm, Franca and Amiya ponder upon what could LGD and Reunion possibly want so much from Misha. Guessing it's probably something important she might know that is a threat to Lungmen's safety. At that moment, Reunion forces approach them. They have followed them all the way from the slums. They quickly dispatch them and decide to wrap up for now since there is no point in continuing combat. Penguin Logistics employees go back to their office and are asked by Amiya to keep investigating Reunion movements in the city. She then instructs Rhodes Island operators to stay vigilant and stay ready for action at a quick notice, as they don't know when or where Reunion can attack them again. She also decides to use rooftops to their advantage as much as possible in the future. Finally, she voices doubts that the situation on Chen's end is going to end so easily. We then move to the wildlands just outside the city, where Crown Slayer is talking with Tallulah. She says that the preparations are complete, to which Tallulah answers it is time to move. The Draco notices Crown Slayer's doubts in her expression and asks her to voice them. She explains that while taking over Lungmen will be very advantageous for reunion, it is a huge risk and wonders why Tallulah is so preoccupied with the idea. Upon hearing this, Tallulah says something very weird, and I want you to remember it. I will simply cite her words here. Do you see that structure over there? That's the symbol of Lungmen. It's also... I didn't come back here just to return everything that has been taken from the infected. I will also make him pay. Above all, don't you think that things are getting very interesting? Don't you agree, Tallulah? She is seemingly asking herself this question as if talking to another person. Sometime later, Rhodes Island is being attacked by a large group of reunion troops. It seems the infiltration of Lungmen by them has passed any expected figures. RI is holding a position on a rooftop, so they defend against them rather effectively. Then, Skull Shatterer appears again. He sees Misha has already been handed over to Lungmen and furiously orders his troops to keep attacking, leaving Rhodes Island with no room to breathe. The squad tries to retreat, but one of Skull Shatterer's squads is already lying in ambush to prevent it. The scene now moves back to Misha, who's being transported by Chen and LGD. Misha attempts to persuade Chen to take care of infected children of the slums, to which the Lung officer answers that infected aren't considered citizens of Lungmen, and so she has no obligation to protect them. That being said, they're still part of the city and LGD does what it can within its limits. She then asks Misha if she knows why she's so sought after. She suspects it's because of her father, a hypothesis confirmed by Chen. As it turns out, Misha's father was the most famous scientist of Chernobog, and one of its most important political figures. Because of that, Misha might know something important. Suddenly, W ambushes LGD. We move back to Rhodes Island now, and they're being cornered by Skull Shatterer and his troops, forcing them into a fight with the reunion commander. The battle goes on for a bit, and both sides take some hits. However, it is interrupted when Skull Shatterer gets the news that W has secured their target. This prompts him to order his soldier to fire a signal flare for Tallulah and retreat. Rhodes Island is confused by the events that just transpired, but Dr. quickly realizes that their squad was not the objective of reunion. They're only here to stall them, so that they couldn't come to LGD's aid, allowing W to take Misha from them. We shortly go back to Chen to see that she's surprised by the 7 level of coordination that allowed the reunion to stall Rhodes Island and all the supporting LGD squads, so that they could kidnap Misha. This marks the end of episode 2. Now a quick summary. 4 days after the Chernobog rescue operation, Rhodes Island arrives at the Yanese autonomous nomadic city, Lungmen. They're there to prevent another reunion takeover. When Doctor and Amia reach the city inspection zone, they are met by a stern superintendent of Lungmen Guard Department, Chen, who upon meeting them, quickly and decisively detains some infected, seeming as if she despises them. Despite that, she takes Rhodes Island leaders to the government headquarters for negotiations with the chief executive of the city, where Dr. Kalsit, another Rhodes Island leader, is already negotiating with him. Chief Wei Yanwu is unwilling to make a deal with Rhodes Island as he doubts their strength and the threat that reunion poses. Amia steps in and tells of their encounter with reunion and their leader back in Chernobog. This proves both Rhodes Island's strength and reunion's danger, so after careful consideration, Wei accepts to cooperate with the pharmaceutical company. The first mission of Rhodes Island under this new contract is to look for Misha, an infected Chernobog refugee, who might have potentially sensitive intel regarding Chernobog. Rhodes Island, with aid from Black Steel and Penguin Logistics, manages to find her and bring her to LGD. The situation grows complicated when Skull Shatterer, one of Reunion commanders, appears also looking for her and intercepts Rhodes Island. When he realizes Misha has already been handed over to LGD, he orders a furious attack on Rhodes Island. Meanwhile, W attacks the LGD convoy and captures Misha. Alright, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I would really appreciate you liking and subscribing to my channel. But anyway, thank you very much for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye!